My son-in-law called my life's work trash and gave me an ultimatum: sell my vintage collection to pay for his wedding or get out of his guest house. He thought I was a broke old man living on his charity. He didn't realize I was watching his bank accounts crumble. I didn't sell my collection to a stranger. I used it to buy his mortgage behind his back. I waited for his engagement dinner to hand him his gift, a 24-hour eviction notice. My name is Silas, and this is how I became my son-in-law's landlord just to kick him out. My name is Silas Thorne. I am 70 years old, and for 50 of those years, I've lived by the tick of a clock. I am a master watchmaker and an estate appraiser. In my world, a second is a lifetime, and precision is everything. To most people, I'm just a quiet old man in a stained leather apron, squinting through a loop at gears no larger than a grain of sand. To my son-in-law, Mark, I was a financial burden. After my wife passed away, my daughter, Clara, insisted I move into their guest house. I thought it was an act of love, a way to keep the family together. But it didn't take long to see the gears turning in Mark's head. Mark was a high-stakes real estate flipper, a man who lived on credit, appearances, and the desperate need to look richer than he was. He didn't want me there for company. He wanted me there so he could keep an eye on my assets. He knew I had a collection of vintage timepieces and rare coins that had been in my family for generations. He saw my legacy as his personal emergency fund. The tension snapped on a Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen, nursing a coffee, when Mark stormed in wearing a $3,000 suit that he probably hadn't paid off yet. He was shouting into his phone about liquidity and market margins. When he hung up, he looked at me with a sneer that told me the polite son-in-law act was over. "Silas, we need to talk," he snapped. "Clara and I are planning a $100,000 destination wedding for our vow renewal. It's about branding, Silas. It's about the future. That guest house you're in, it's taking up space we need for the bridal suite and the VIP guests. And that collection of yours, it's just sitting in my safe, gathering dust." "That collection is my retirement, Mark," I said, my voice as steady as a pendulum. "And it's Clara's inheritance. Clara's future is now," he spat. "Sell the watches. Give us the $50,000 for the venue deposit, or you can take your legacy and find a new roof to put it under. You have 1 week. I'm done carrying your weight." I looked at Clara, who was standing by the sink. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mark had her convinced that they were temporarily tight on cash. But I'm an appraiser, I know how to spot a fake. I had seen the past due notices for the mortgage buried in the recycling bin. Mark wasn't just tight, he was drowning. Mark thought I was outdated because I used a fountain pen instead of an iPad. He assumed that because I didn't understand crypto, I didn't understand finance. He was wrong. I spent the next 3 days making quiet calls to old friends in high places, specifically the vice president of the bank that held Mark's mortgage. Because I had appraised their private collections for years, they were happy to talk. Mark was 90 days delinquent on a massive second mortgage he'd taken out to fund his luxury lifestyle. The bank was weeks away from foreclosure. I didn't panic. I went to my small workshop and pulled out my most prized possession, a Patek Philippe 1518. To a layman, it's a watch. To a collector, it's a $500,000 masterpiece. I didn't sell it to a dealer. Instead, I contacted a private equity trust one had established decades ago. The trust purchased the watch from me, generating immediate liquid capital. Then, I had the trust perform a hostile debt acquisition. I didn't just pay Mark's debt, I bought it. In the eyes of the law, Mark no longer owed the bank. He owed a company called Kronos Holdings, and I was the sole director of Kronos. A week later, Mark threw a lavish dinner party. He had invited his wealthy business partners to announce the vow renewal. He was glowing with arrogance, certain that I had spent the week groveling to watch dealers to get his money. "A toast," Mark shouted, standing at the head of the long mahogany table. "To family, and to Silas, for finally realizing that old things must be traded for new beginnings. Silas, did you bring the check?" The table went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I stood up slowly, reaching into my jacket pocket. "I didn't bring a check, Mark," I said. "But I did bring a gift. You were so worried about the guest house taking up space, I decided to resolve the housing situation once and for all." I handed him a thick, formal blue envelope. He snatched it, grinning at his friends. But as he read the first page, the color drained from his face. His hands began to shake. What is this?" Mark stammered. "A notice of transfer of deed? An eviction." "Read the fine print, Mark," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "You failed to pay your mortgage for 3 months. The bank sold your debt to Kronos Holdings. I own that company. That means I now own this house, the guest house, and everything bolted to the floor. You aren't the boss here. You're a tenant in default. You can't do this. We're family," Clara cried, finally finding her voice. "I am doing this for you, Clara," I said. "I'm protecting our family's security from a man who would throw his own father on the street for a party. Mark, you gave me a week to move out. I'm a busy man, so I'm giving you 24 hours. My old things are staying. You're the one who is out of time." Mark tried to fight it, but you can't argue with a legal deed and a mountain of debt. He was forced to move into a cramped, one-bedroom apartment across town. Clara stayed with me in the big house, eventually waking up to the reality of Mark's financial abuse. They divorced a year later. Today, Clara helps me manage the estate. We've turned the main house into a private museum for the collection Mark called Trash. I'm still Silas Thorne. I may be old, and I may move slowly, but I know exactly what a second is worth. And Mark? He found out that when the clock runs out, there's no such thing as extra time.